Okay, it's time to rank all three of these sick-ass movies. Let's do this. What is up everyone, Movie Worm, back again with another ranking video, and today I'm going to be ranking all three Human Centipede films, from the worst to the best, but I'm also going to be putting a little bit of a spin on this. I'm also going to be ranking them from the least most shocking to the most shocking at the same time. So when I come to part 3, I'll have the least best movie out of the trilogy, and then I'll move on to the least most shocking, and then I'll move into second place. I hope that makes sense. It will make sense as the video goes on. Now, just quickly on this trilogy, I had not the greatest time with it. It wasn't the most fun franchise to go through, and there is some very shocking moments within this franchise, but I'll talk about more of them when I'm talking about the shocking parts of the movies. But let's just get into it with third place. Coming in at third place for the least best of this trilogy is The Human Centipede Part 3. Now, this was a little bit of a more out there film. Tom Six tried to go in a little bit of a different direction by placing this all in a prison, and a lot of characters are known to what's going on, whereas the other two villains in the other two movies kind of kept it to themselves and were very low key. But we've got this crazy prison warden who just gets everyone involved in wanting to make this centipede. The doctor's in the jail, he gets his boss to do it, he gets his accountant involved, and it just gave off this very comedic element, and I don't think it quite worked, because there's some brutal scenes in this movie, which I'll talk about in a second, but there's too much entertainment and comedic value thrown at you as well, and it just didn't mix very well, unfortunately. I did appreciate Tom Six going in a different direction, but he just didn't pull it off, and it does feel like a little bit of a mockery of itself, because it's got the Eta Laser coming back, Lawrence R. Harvey playing totally different characters. It's even got Tom Six himself in there playing himself. And the worst part of this movie for me was actually the Eta Laser, which kills me to say this, but he's just absolutely shouting all over the place. He's screaming every sentence he can, very, very loudly, and it's very off-putting. It made me almost not want to watch the film, and it's just not a very good performance for a very out there character, in my opinion. That just overpowers the screen too much. So in third place is The Human Centipede 3. Coming in at least most shocking in third place though is going to be the first Human Centipede. Now, Tom Six had this idea in his head, and I don't think he quite fully knew what to do with it to get the shock factor out there, but he does seem to pull it off in certain ways, because there are moments where you're just like, oh my god, when the first time the person at the front shits in the girl's mouth, who is second, who must be in the worst position possible in the middle of that 3-person centipede there. But overall, there aren't too many shocking moments in this movie. I gave it a 1 out of 5 for the shock factor. Another thing that did stand out to me though was he gets this guy who won't match for the centipede, like his DNA just won't match, it won't come together with the other two girls. So he just gives him a lethal injection while the two girls watch. I thought that was a little bit of a difficult scene to watch, but overall this just felt like an everyday horror film with a guy who shits in a girl's mouth thrown in there. So yeah, third place for shock factor is the first Human Centipede film. Coming in second place for best movie of this trilogy is going to be The Human Centipede Part 2. Now, there isn't much of a story to this one. Even the third one had more of a story, arguably, but this is so elevated by Lawrence R. Harvey's performance as Martin. By far the most depraved character in all of these movies. He is so grotesque and just gross. And he's one of them, he might be the most gross character I've ever seen in a movie. Because he is just, he wants to inflict violence on everyone. He laughs at other people's pain. And he's just this very, very sinister and character that just made me feel uncomfortable, basically. And he is definitely the best part of this movie. He's the reason to watch it. But after that, there isn't much else to it. I suppose there's a few interesting moments when he goes home and you learn more about his past, where his father abused him and his mother's not very nice to him at all. He's got these neighbours who kind of bully him. In fact, he's just an absolute bully victim all around. People see him as an easy target. But the movie is basically just him working in a parking lot and kidnapping people to take them to his other lockup there to make them into a centipede. And I do think the 12-man centipede works better than the 3-man one than in the first movie. But overall, I was left with a bit of an empty feeling by the end. I don't think it's a very good film. I don't think it's a bad one. It's just very, very average, in my opinion. So, coming in second place for best of the trilogy is the Human Centipede 2. Coming in for the shock factor in second place is going to be the Human Centipede 3. Now, Tom Six toned it down a little bit from the second movie there because that is just so out there. But here there is still some brutal scenes. And I think these would have been more effective if it didn't have so many comedic elements thrown in. But the brutal scenes do put that to one side for them moments. And there's a guy's testicles being cut off here, and then later on eaten for the warden's dinner. Cooked in batter there. I just thought that was absolutely sickening scene. There's a couple of rape scenes that are hard to watch, involving the warden being raped, involving the secretary being raped while she's in a coma and battered and bruised. That was just, didn't sit right with me at all. And there's also the waterboard torture scene, which is a very, very famous torture method inflicted onto terrorists, I believe in Guantanamo Bay and stuff, where they pour water on you and it feels like you're drowning through a towel. And he does this to a prisoner in the movie, but does it with boiling water. Yes. So there are some moments there where you're just like wincing at the screen. I do think the centipede moments later on in the film weren't very shocking at all. We only see it for about 10 minutes and it's not a very effective. It's definitely more effective in the other two films, but still some shocking scenes here. So in second place for shock factor is the Human Centipede 3. Coming in as the best of the trilogy though is going to be the Human Centipede One. Now, even though this is the least shocking of the three, it's probably still the best as a story point of view. Now, Tom Six, it's nothing special, but he uses a very, very tried and tested formula that has worked so many times. A couple of girls have car trouble, they go to the nearest house and seek help for to get their car together. And who lives there? A maniac, of course, yes, played by Detail Laser, who wants to make this centipede. But why I think this is the best movie, it takes its time. It doesn't just go for the shock factor there. It doesn't just set out to disturb you. It tries to tell a story, even though it's a story we've seen a million times, but it's a better story than the other two films. And Dieter Laser was actually really good in this one. He was bad in the third, but here he's a very sinister character. He adds so much to the movie, kind of like Lawrence R. Harvey does in the second film. And he's a very, very mysterious character who you just know is up to no good. And I thought the three cast members done well with what they could, even though for the second part of the film they can't really do anything because their mouths are shut. But as you're watching this, you don't really know too much about the Human Centipede anyway, because it's the first movie and it just nicely plays out. So in first place, I'm going to give to the Human Centipede Part 1. Coming in first place for the shock factor though is definitely the Human Centipede 2. Now, when I first watched this back in 2011, I thought it was the most shocking thing I'd ever seen in my life. On this rewatch, I don't think it was as bad, but it still was really shocking. There are some grim moments in here. Don't forget to check out my review of this if you want me to go into full detail about everything that happens, but this movie has everything. I mean, there is people smashed over the head with all sorts of objects. There is a lot of feces, shit into people's mouths, just flowing all over the screen there. There's a moment that tries to be very, very disturbing, but it just didn't quite hit with me because I couldn't see what was happening. But a newborn baby's skull is crushed under a pedal there of a car. And I will explain in my review why I don't think that was too disturbing, because it was silly, but that is in this movie. And we've also got Martin having sex with the girl at the back of the centipede by wrapping barbed wire around his penis, inflicting pain on both of them. And there's even more. I mean, this movie just goes for it. But one of the most shocking scenes for me is when Martin is getting really, really fed up by the end of the movie, and he just wants to kill everyone in the centipede, and he proceeds to just put a bullet in each of their heads while they all have to watch each other die. Then he runs out of bullets and starts slicing their neck with like this kind of blunt knife. It's taken him ages to get through. And I was watching it going, oh, this guy is just fucking so grotesque, man. And he, like I said, he's one of the most sinister and gross characters I've ever seen in a film. So for the shock factor, I'm going to give it to the Human Centipede Part 2. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this ranking with a little bit of a different twist on it, ranking them from shocking and from best movie. What do you think of the Human Centipede trilogy? Are you got plans on watching it if you haven't seen it? And just leave the comments down below. What are your rankings for shock factor and the best movie? Let me know and we can all discuss it there. I will reply to every single one of you, I promise. Take it all easy guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.